So now we're going to get into section 7.6, double and half angle formulas. So we're going to start off with the half angle formulas. This says find the exact value. So essentially what this means here is I'm going to take the cosine of, and instead of 22.5, if I double that, that's actually going to be 45 degrees over 2. So this is kind of how I write it out, and then I'm looking at this second one here. So this is the one I'm actually going to use here. So the first thing to realize is this going to be positive or negative? Now 22.5 degrees is actually in the first quadrant. So if I think about the idea of what I'm dealing with here, all students take calc here, then that would mean it's going to be in the first quadrant here, and I know cosine is positive there because they're all positive there. So that tells me then I'm going to deal with a positive sign there instead of the negative. So I'm going to end up with the square root, and then I'm going to do 1 plus cosine of 45 degrees over 2. There it is. So now what we're going to do from here is, what is the cosine of 45 degrees? Now we may have to draw the triangle out. And it would be here. 45 degrees is here. That means 1, square root of 2. It's our fancy triangle. So it's going to be adjacent over hypotenuse. So that's going to equal square root of 1 plus root 2 over 2. When I rationalize it, all over 2. Okay, so this is what we have. So now this wouldn't actually be good enough for an answer. So what I'm going to do here is, if I can take the top inside of this radical and multiply the top by 2 and the bottom by 2. Really, honestly, we're multiplying both the top and the bottom by square root of 2. But essentially, I just like to think of it, I'm multiplying the 2 by the top and the bottom of the inside of the radical. And that's going to actually give me 2 plus square root of 2 over 4 and square root. So the top might question you a little bit. You might have a question there. So essentially this is a distributive property here. And if I think of this over 1, I'm going to distribute it to the first one first, and that's where I get this 2 here. That's where that comes from. And then when I do the next one here, those 2's are going to cancel. And I'm just going to end up with square root of 2 over 1, or just square root of 2. And then 2 times 2 is 4. So that's actually where that comes from, if you're curious. Okay, so now from here, that is actually, there's no from here. That is actually the final answer. Okay, so there's our answer for the first one. So now let's try this one here, tan of 7 pi eighths. Now that isn't one of our general angles, so the reason for using any of these identities, double angle, half angle, sum, difference, we're trying to get it in terms of an angle that we know that comes from our special triangles. Either 45 degrees, 30 degrees, 60 degrees, 90 degrees, those angles. Or pi fourths, pi thirds, pi sixths, pi halves. Those are the angles I'm looking for when I'm dealing with any of these identities. So now if I take a look at this here, if I think about just the idea of 7 pi eighths and I double it, okay, that's 2 over 1, and I'm timesing. That's going to make that a 1, that's a 4. So that's going to equal 7 pi fourths. And that's an angle I know. 7 pi fourths, a fourth of an angle. So the pi fourths. So we're going to write that in terms of that there. So this is really going to be the tan of 7 pi fourths over 2. Okay, because remember, I doubled it up here. So then down here I put the half, and that kind of offsets it. And that's why I'm able to get away with that. Okay, so now all I'm going to do here is follow my formula. But I do have to understand what quadrant I'm in. Now think about this. This is tangent of 7 pi eighths. So 8 pi eighths is going to be pi. 7 pi-8ths is 1 before it, so it's over in this quadrant here. So that's quadrant 2. All students take calc. So since it's tangent, we know tangent is negative here. So what we're going to do now, since we know that it's negative, we're going to put the negative sign here right away so we don't forget about it. And then this is just the square root of, and it's going to be 1 minus cosine of 7 pi fourths over 1 plus cosine of 7 pi fourths. And that's all square rooted. So now we have to draw a triangle in our unit circle to find out if it's positive or negative. Now 8 pi fourths is the same thing as 2 pi. And where 7 pi fourths, that's a pi 4 short, so that's pi fourths. And we're dealing with cosine there. So since that's pi fourths, this is 1 square root of 2. That's our triangle. That's a negative there. So since it's cosine, they're both going to be positive. So it's going to be root 2 over 2 because it's adjacent over hypotenuse. It's 1 over root 2, but when I rationalize, it's going to be root 2 over 2. So this is what we end up with. So square root 1 minus root 2 over 2 over 1 plus, or root 2 over 2. All right, so now what we're going to do from here is the same idea that we used before. So in essence, I'm multiplying square root of 2 times the top and the bottom. Remember, it's like we're inside of those once we do that. So where it's like we have that 2 in there. And then, again, I'm going to distribute to both the top and the bottom. So then we're going to end up with 2 minus root 2 over 2 plus root 2 square rooted. And don't forget our negative symbol because it was a minus there. Remember that. Okay, now this might not be good enough for the homework. So we may have to go further than this. So how do I deal with that? If you have to go further than this, what I'm doing is I'm multiplying 2 minus root 2. I'm thinking of the idea of the difference of squares, so I have to multiply the top by 2 minus root 2. So this is what we end up with. Now notice here, when I multiply this, I wrote the answer down what it equals. But I have a FOIL on the top and the bottom. And what happens here is because I have the plus and the minus, they end up canceling the middle terms out, and that's our purpose for picking the plus and the minus. Now for the top, it's just the FOIL, and I end up with a square root there. So from here, we can simplify this more. Now here's where it simplifies to. Now I can't do the 6 minus 4 because there's a times here. So I can't do that, so I have to be careful. But I can divide a 2 out of the bottom here and these 2 terms in the top, here and here. They all contain a 2. So I can actually divide that out of each like I do with a quadratic formula when I get the answers there. And I'm just going to write the final answer all the way over here because I ran out of room. So it's going to be negative square root of 3 minus 2 square root of 2. And that's going to be the final answer. Pretty sure that's what they're going to want.